Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Tuesdays wherever across this great country or this great world you may now be. All right, a lot of discussion for a bunch of different stories that all happened today. We got to dive in. Let me give you a rundown right now. I will give you Westbrook and the fan going at each other. I'll break it down for you from my perspective. What happened there? NFL free agency. In particular, it doesn't start until 4 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. But what in the world's going on with Le'Veon Bell? What about college admissions? The scandal involving Aunt Becky from Full House and Felicity Huffman from Desperate Housewives. What did they do to get their kids into school? And the Pac-12. The commissioner, Larry Scott, has a $7,500 suite per night in the Aria for purposes of the Pac-12 title game. He's getting ripped for it. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I will explain why. Larry Scott has done a lot of things that I don't think are make great sense, and he makes a ton of money. But I don't think this is as big of an issue. All right? Let me beginning with this story. Westbrook and a fan. If you're not familiar with this story, last night in a game against Utah, Russell Westbrook got into it with a member of the Utah Jazz fan base that was in the crowd. The fan alleges that he was going at Russell Westbrook, talking about Westbrook icing his knees. Westbrook eventually said, no, he was telling me to stay on my knees. And so the question spread from there. Westbrook eventually went after the fan and told the fan that basically he would beat his ass and that he would beat the woman's ass sitting beside him, meaning the wife. Now, I want to dive into this story because I think it's kind of fascinating because it raises a lot of different issues. Now, first of all, I think the easy solution. Let's pretend that I am Adam Silver right now and I'm trying to get this story to disappear. Okay? If you are trying to get this story to disappear, the easiest thing you can do is all you have to do is come out and say straightforward and easy and with no difficulty at all. All you have to do is say, I'm going to fine Russell Westbrook a substantial amount of money, $25,000 or $50,000, something that is almost no cost to him overall. It's like a parking ticket for your average person. And I would also go ahead and not let this fan return to games for the remainder of the year. There's about 15 Utah Jazz games remaining. The ticket will be sold with ease. And then it's not like the Jazz are making a run to the NBA Finals or anything. They may win a game. They may not. They're not going to go very far. That way, you punish both sides and you don't have this story linger and it doesn't grow very much. Now, I got to tell you, Russell Westbrook seems like he is trending towards an explosion with fans in this league, and there's absolutely nothing substantial about this from, in my opinion, a race perspective, okay? What happens now is oftentimes when a player is caught on video behaving inappropriately, almost immediately he says, well, it was because somebody said something racial to me. The allegation here is that the player, Russell Westbrook says, he said, stay on your knees like you're used to, according to the ESPN article that I read. And what's crazy about that is it's clearly a homophobic statement, right? He's saying that Russell Westbrook is gay and that he likes to suck dick. This is a common insult for men, right? Like, this is not some revolutionary, like, unbelievable comment the guy made. Now, the guy denies having said it, and he says that all he was doing was telling Russell Westbrook to basically continue to ice his knees. Now, who knows what the truth is? I would just say this. In general, virtually everything that you say in a crowded arena, somebody has got their phone out recording it. Whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter video, whether it's Facebook, almost everything said in a crowded arena ends up on video now. And a lot of times it ends up from a variety of different angles. So I would say if this fan in general was saying things that were flagrantly inappropriate, it's likely that somebody out there would have found and heard this thing, and it would be out there virally everywhere. Okay? If in some way this fan had been behaving inappropriately, somebody would have a video of it, somebody would have audio of it, and it would be out there almost immediately. Now, maybe that's still going to happen, but we're almost a day, 20 hours, whatever the heck it is, since this happened, and the only video out is still Russell Westbrook's threatening to beat the woman alongside of this guy's ass. If he had only said, hey, guess what? I'm going to beat your ass. If he had just said, I'm going to beat your ass, then almost nobody would have reacted at all. If he had, no, pause right here. All right, I'm going to have to block this guy. A lot of you are too dumb. You immediately fall for whatever happens on a timeline and think that whatever tweet gets created is real. It's insanely easy to create fake tweets. And the guy evidently ended up in the middle of a tweet fire, and he just decided to delete his entire Twitter account. So what people always say every time there's a story is that what happened before shouldn't matter here. I don't know this guy's life. I have no idea what he believes. I have no idea earthly about his entire life as a human being. But if he were doing things inappropriately at this exact time, then somebody would have commented on it. It would have been a larger issue in terms of what he was doing. I think what happened here is Russell Westbrook lost his mind, lost his cool, let this fan get under his skin, lost his cool, and then when he decided to actually talk about this afterwards, when he realized what had happened of a viral nature, he tried to put the blame on the fan. But let's take a step back here. Let's take a step back here and think about this. Just because somebody does something that angers you doesn't give you license to do worse. And I feel like we've lost that nuance and that understanding as a society. Even if this guy had behaved incredibly inappropriately, Russell Westbrook threatening to beat his ass and his wife's ass would not be appropriate behavior for an NBA player making $40 million a year. If he had just threatened to beat this guy's ass, nobody would have even cared that much about this video going viral. But when you decide to say you're going to threaten to beat his wife's ass too, in this age that we live in, where everything is under scrutiny, certainly in the world of domestic violence towards women and its relationship with athletics, and the woman wasn't even alleged to have ever said anything, that's going to be a big viral moment. Which is why, again, I think the solution here, if you're Adam Silver and you're looking at this in an intelligent fashion, the best thing to do without any doubt is to fine Russell Westbrook. You shouldn't suspend him. I don't agree with suspending players for incidents like these. I don't think it makes sense to suspend a player for something that he says. I'm more concerned with acts than I am with words, and I know that makes me a rarity in today's America where everybody is obsessed with words and not as much acts. You suspend the guy from being able to come to any Utah Jazz games for the rest of the year, and you go out and you find Russell Westbrook, and this story goes away. And so that's the way that I think I would handle it. Also, in a larger sense, you need to sit down with Russell Westbrook if you were Adam Silver and have a conversation with him, because he's increasingly starting to spiral out of control, it seems to me. A kid touches him on the court and he loses his mind, okay? I think that you need to sit down with Russell Westbrook if you're Adam Silver and say, what's going on here? What is creating this environment whereby you are so angry at fans? Because here's what I will say in general. You can't tell me that in this situation, fans are meaner today to players than they were in the 1990s. I think players are just softer. I think if you went back in time to Reggie Miller, can you imagine the things that would have been said to Reggie Miller from the crowd? I think you need to be tough. I think you need to not respond. I think you need to be bigger than everybody out there who is making comments, right? And so as a result, I think in general, this is an opportunity for Adam Silver to take back control of the league. And you got to talk to Russell Westbrook and ensure that you don't end up with another Malice in the Palace situation where somebody runs out onto into the crowd and starts to create a stir. Okay, so that I think is worth paying attention to. That's my thoughts in general on this Russell Westbrook story. Le'Veon Bell. Let's talk about Le'Veon Bell for a minute. Le'Veon Bell, to me, is a fascinating story. The guy sits out for a year because he's convinced he is being underpaid. He's convinced that he is being underpaid, and he says, you know what, I'm going to sit out for a year, and I'm going to make a ton of money. And I think what he's realizing is the same reason the Steelers didn't want to pay him is the same reason nobody else wanted to pay him either. Running back's not that valuable. And so if you were insanely valued as a player, then you would already be signed. Reading the tea leaves here, I think what's going on is Le'Veon Bell didn't get the blockbuster offer that he wanted. It didn't get the opportunity to go out and get paid like he expected that he would, not just a lot overall, but a lot to make up for what happened in the past year. And so I think people looked around, they said, wait a minute. If you look at this Steelers offense without Le'Veon Bell, James Conner came in and did pretty well in his place. And so as a result, the overall running back position, you got to give a guy like Jalen Hurd some credit, right? Because Jalen Hurd decided, former running back at Tennessee, he read the tea leaves. He said, I could be a running back, but instead I want to go back and use my athletic skills to become a wide receiver. And in theory, he's going to make a lot of money when he gets drafted. We'll see exactly how it pans out and whether it pans out. But I think that's a pretty good opportunity. So I don't think Le'Veon Bell is going to get paid very well. I think, honestly, it makes more sense for him to join the Jets than it does the Ravens, because the Ravens can't throw the ball with Lamar Jackson. And all that's going to happen eventually is what we saw happen in the playoffs. Everybody's going to stack the line. And without big-time playmakers like Antonio Brown or a big-time quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, I think what happens is Le'Veon Bell's effectiveness goes into the tank. Also, with the talented players that the Ravens have lost on defense, I'm not sure that next year's policy would work out anyway. So this is going to be a fun story to follow because, again, Antonio Brown was able to act up with the Steelers, and he ultimately got paid, but that's because he's a wide receiver of incredible talent. I think what we're seeing is certain positions are devalued, and certainly one of them is the running back position. And Le'Veon Bell, if he had a massive contract offer, would have gotten it already. Now, watch out for something that I think might happen with his agent is I bet when he signs a contract, it's going to be insanely backloaded. So for purposes of being able to get attention, he's going to say, hey, I got $80 million or whatever it is. But what you always should pay attention to with all of these NFL contract stories is not the total value or even the average value per year. It's how much actual guaranteed money do you get. And if you're not getting that much guaranteed money, then the back-end dollars don't matter at all, because we all know in the NFL you'll get cut after a couple of years, and that back-end money will never actually materialize. So I think Le'Veon Bell is getting a lot less guaranteed money than he anticipated getting, and I also think that he is now triggered because he's not getting the money that he anticipated getting. He's sitting around saying, why did I not take $14 million last year? Because unlike a lot of people who thought, oh, he'll just make it up in his next contract, he's not going to make it up in his next contract. In fact, he's just going to miss out on that entire year's worth of earning salary. Now, maybe he's going to end up being and having an opportunity to play an extra year than he would have if he had played, but that will be a story to follow, okay? Also, let's talk about this college admission scandal. If you didn't pay attention to it, Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, a.k.a. Aunt Becky from the Full House show back in the day, this is an intriguing story. It turns out, and I can't believe a story like this was possible, it turns out that it was capable, that they were capable of getting, and by the way, we're working on the light fixtures, if you're noticing a big difference on my light here during this show, as we're getting ready for Lock It In, which will be on next. And by the way, I'm the king. But for people who are watching on Periscope and Facebook or watching this later, we're adjusting the lighting overall for the show to make me even more gorgeous than I already am later on the show. All right, so the college admission scandal. I can't believe that this could exist, but at many prominent universities, they were paying off coaches in order to get their students examined and admitted as athletes as opposed to as regular students trying to get admitted. And so this has turned into a massive scandal because these coaches at lower level programs, sailing at Stanford, soccer, I think, at some of the Yale or something like that, they get a certain number of players, athletes, that they can put in and have an opportunity to see what to see that they're saying, hey, they're athletes, so they get held to a different standard. And as a result, they were basically selling these spots for up to $1.2 million to parents. And this is a wild story. I had no idea how much parents would pay to get their kids into the top university, because I think this is mostly about the parents, not about the kids. Your average kid doesn't really care that much in general about what's going on with what school they get into. This is all about the parents being able to brag at the country club, at the private school, about how smart their son or daughter is and what school they got into. So I think if you look at this in general, it's a wild story. It's a wild story, and the question that I have is, how did these admissions committees not realize? I mean, what these people were making up in order to be eligible is crazy, right? Like, what they were making up is utterly insane. The FBI conducts an investigation, and it is now underway. These people are being charged with crimes. We'll see what ends up happening. So that is, in and of itself, a utterly wild story. Again, to me, it's a failure of the college admissions processes if they had all these people out there that were being admitted for athletics and they weren't actually playing the athletics. What they would do is never play, or they were never good enough to actually be admitted as athletes. You'd think that at some point you might put your finger on this and realize what was going on. The lack of oversight here in a highly competitive business where it's so hard to get into a university one year after the other, you would think that would be flagged at some point, but it hasn't ever happened. All right, finally, I got to get ready for my for my television show, but thoughts on this in general. The Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Scott, who's making, I believe, $4.5 million a year, is out in Las Vegas for his conference's basketball tournament, and he is staying, reportedly, in a $7,500 suite in Aria. Now, hopefully this is the same suite they're going to reserve for me next week when we're out there Wednesday and Thursday and Friday doing Lock It In from Vegas, from the MGM Grand. Hopefully they will give me a massive suite like this too. Again, we will be at the MGM Grand on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday doing our show Lock It In live from Vegas. So if you haven't at all been to Vegas before, or if you're going to be there this year, we're doing an Outkick VIP meetup in Vegas, and also you'll be able to watch the television show Lock It In be filmed at the MGM Grand. So it should be a really cool setup. I think we're going to be in the sports book. I'm not sure exactly, but it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to see what that's going to look like. And I'm getting a thumbs up that we are, in fact, going to be inside the sports book in the MGM Grand. So if you or your friends or any of your family are going to be out in Vegas for the NCAA tournament, we will be live Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 1:30 Pacific time, filming our own show. It would be live for Lock It In that will air on FS1. So that should be pretty cool. But the $7,500 suite, I think, is an example of a story that gets spread widely, but isn't actually that big of a deal. Because if you've ever spent any time in Vegas, the Pac-12 is likely getting that suite completely as a freebie because of all the other rooms that they are guaranteeing as a part of their Pac-12 basketball tournament. And my assumption would be that they are then going to use that suite to wine and dine big sponsors and everybody else who is there for the Pac-12 tournament. So the way this is being spread, I don't spend a lot of time defending Larry Scott. I don't think he's done necessarily a great job as a conference commissioner necessarily, but also I don't think this is fair. Because if you actually look into the story, I think what you would likely find, and in fact already people are starting to say this, is the suite is comped as part of a larger package of nights. It's not like Larry Scott is staying in a $7,500 suite by himself. So I think this is an example of something that on social media people lose their mind and they run wild with, and they just want to attack Larry Scott. But when you actually examine any of the evidence at all, if you've ever been to a hotel for a big convention or anything like that, if someone is buying a lot of rooms already, they often will throw in a suite like this for free, and it would make sense that the commissioner of the conference would stay there and take advantage of a suite like that to help foster further university relations, maybe even to have a meeting there as opposed to in a conference room in the hotel. So don't just get caught up in the outrage. I know it exists on social media right now. I've seen everybody teeing off on Larry Scott. I'm sure this was comped. What do you want him to do? Not take the best suite that exists in the hotel and not bring Pac-12 ADs and Pac-12 presidents and everybody else up for meetings, Pac-12 business partners? To me, like, this is a perfect example of how business is done, and it's also an example of how things on social media take control and just run with it. All right, I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I got to go get ready for my show. We'll have a special Outkick the Show tomorrow, right as NFL free agency ends, to run down through all the winners and the losers. I think it will be a lot of fun. We'll see exactly what has happened, what the winners, what the losers are. In the meantime, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I'll be live on FS1 on Lock It In here momentarily at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific, and be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern on my radio show, Outkick the Coverage. Kisses to everybody. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Like I said, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.